Well, I'm Rick,
And I'm Eric.
and we are your transparent wealth management hosts.
Welcome to our show.
Well, happy Friday to you, my friend.
Happy Friday to you, sir.
You know, I'm glad to see it come to the end of the week here. We are in the Midwest, and it's turning in one of the coldest Februarys on record.
It's what I heard this morning. The average, it's supposed to be in the low 40s, and I think you just mentioned to Brad out in Arizona, it's what,
two or three degrees.
2 or 3 degrees right now.
And I don't know what the high is supposed to be, but it seems kind of odd when we talk about highs when it's so low.
That's
You know, we were having a conversation before the show about how I'm not sure how the global warming connects with colder temperatures, but I know we're freezing our butts off here.
we are. It's not
Thank
going
goodness,
away.
let's look for the silver lining here, that the sun is shining, and it has really stayed kind of robust in that regard, and we got time change coming pretty soon. As long as I'm getting more daylight, I'm usually a little better off. I think people's disposition seems a little better.
Yeah, I think I realized that last night it was still sunny at like 7 p.m., and I was pretty happy about that. Because it went, about 4 months when it seemed like we'd come in to work in the morning, it'd be dark, and we'd leave.
Could you imagine living
dark.
in Alaska where you get 6 months of pseudo-darkness?
Not for me.
And then in a day, then, you know, when it flips, then you get
Sunlight straight.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's either feast or famine there. So
That's why we live here in Ohio.
Well, that's part of it. And then we can travel to other places where it's warmer when we don't like it. It's not working out for us. And so that's kind of, I guess that's somewhat of an advantage. If we don't like it, then I guess we could move.
That's right. You can.
That's the beauty of America.
It is.
We can move where we want, move about the country. So, that's, we're hoping that it's coming to a halt. I heard somebody say next week that it's supposed to be in the 50s.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get out and do my cross-country skiing. The snow that we got about 8 inches. And I think up north here where I'm going, it's maybe, they didn't get quite as much as us. They maybe got about half that.
Still snow.
Enough snow on the ground, and and all my equipment's up there. Now I'm regretting moving my equipment. But, hey, you know, it is Friday, and we love to have the you listeners out there following us and looking for the tidbits of hopefully some good insight we're going to give you today. And today's show, actually, Eric, is about 6 moves to retire smarter.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I'm always looking about not making the same mistakes that I made yesterday.
Correct. You need to be able to critique yourself and understand that you've made mistakes, because if you don't understand, you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. But it's realizing that and then taking the steps to avoid those mistakes in the future. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and you want to give it with I guess tried and proven methodology that's more accurate, let's say. And you look at the cause and effect, and as we're fond of saying, since it's the sailor financial, that you adjust your sails and make those adjustments as you go along, because if you can, the classic definition for insanity is doing the same things over and over again.
Yep.
Expecting different results. Yeah. So, there's enough things. There's enough things that are the knowns. Focus on the knowns. Begin with the end in mind. We're not the first ones to ever do this. Now, we're in kind of what I like to fondly call the paranormal market, where the age of stimulus. For those 60s listeners out there, it was the age of Aquarius. Well, now we're in the age of stimulus. And it's certainly an interesting, dynamic that it plays on the markets where fundamentals don't run the market. Low interest rates for abnormally long periods of time may be necessary. But now we know the Fed is probably most likely going to raise those between June and September this year. And we're seeing our economic reads every day that are kind of pointing to that. Don't know for sure. The Fed kind of has a mind of their own, but where the United States is the only country on the entire globe that's really expanding economically and not robustly, slowly, we've got everybody else their banks are easing.
I think there's only one other big bank in the world, and I think it's Britain.
Britain. I think, you're right. It is Britain.
Looking to raise interest
rates. So it's us and them.
Yep.
And again, consumption's the key. But as you kind of look at investments, you look at processes, everything else, I think that's the whole thing behind a transparent wealth management approach. Because people should know what they're paying, why they're paying, and what it's doing for them.
And if not?
Change.
Yep.
So, that kind of goes hand in hand with the holistic model of, we are a wealth management firm that's both fee-based and commission-based. We just find whatever's broken and fix it.
Yep. We have tax planning partners, so we do both the planning and the preparation. Preparation's mandatory, planning is optional. So we outsource that to a CPA firm here locally in Cincinnati, and they take great care of our clients. And they're the ones staying ahead of the tax curve, because the tax code is not going to get any simpler or easier, and you better understand what you're doing.
I think that's tax planning is not optional anymore if you want to keep more of what you're making. In the area of risk management and insurances, we have partners again that handle that, everything from the long-term care, the new long-term care alternatives. Those are very interesting. But life insurance, long-term care, Medicare planning, disability income, life insurance. My wife Kim heads up that department and deals with all those pieces. So again, we have all those tools in our bag.
The last piece, the last pillar, is estate planning and elder law. So that's making sure your estate is in order when that day comes. You can do a lot of easy, efficient planning today to make sure your loved ones are the ones who receive your assets and your money, not the courts, not the hospitals, not the attorneys. So do that planning today to ensure your loved ones get your legacy.
So one thing to keep in mind today, Eric, for our listeners, is that these are educational. It's not meant to be construed as advice. Our companies, Rick Saylor Financial and our broker-dealer National Planning Corporation, are separate and unrelated companies. We are a registered investment advisor, as well as working through a broker-dealer relationship. And anything today doesn't constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Certainly seek that out. Always consult with qualified financial, legal, and tax real estate professionals prior to taking any action. And any statements that we may be making may sound projective, they're forward-looking. However, these are our opinions, and nobody has a crystal ball, and some of the work we rely on is the work of HS Dent, and we rely on them. They've really done some cool stuff and continue to do that, and looking at those dynamic, and how those impact the market both historically and potentially going forward.
Yep.
So in this topic, there's 6 items that we're going to cover a lot of information and hopefully give you a lot of tidbits that's going to help you make smarter, wiser decisions about your money. And as always, if you feel that you have some questions and you want to run them past us, feel free to call us. I mean, we have a number here that rings 24/7. At 513-454-9999, and you can just give us your question, and we can get back to you and follow up. There's no obligation or anything. We just want you to see, hopefully what's broken, and hopefully we can be part of the solution. But we'll give you the straight story on that.
That's right. And at the end of the show, we will have a free giveaway, like Rick just mentioned. We're just going to scratch the surface here. So, Rick, why don't we get started here? 6 simple moves that you can make. The first one: determine your best guesstimate of how long you'll live.
That's a good one. And if you know that, it makes our job easier. If you know exactly. Create an income withdrawal strategy.
Number 3 is create a budget or update a budget if you have one.
Number 4 is diversify your investments, and I would say truly verify that they are diversified.
Yep. Number 5, plan for income in case your life goes into the extra innings.
Or overtime in the case of football. And KISS, we've always heard this, keep it simple. Consolidate your accounts, consolidate your strategies, diversify your strategy, but consolidate that in a place where it's integrated, I should say. And again, we like many of our clients like that holistic approach where things are being communicated between the functioning pieces to make sure that they do function better.
So, Rick, if there were truly 6 simple moves that could have a very profound impact on your lifestyle in retirement, wouldn't you want to know what they were?
Well, I would, but I don't know. Hopefully I'm not the exception to the rule. There's a lot at stake here when I think about this. This is not just a matter of drops in the bucket. This can be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime income. And these can be game changers. I mean, this is the difference oftentimes when we're working with the folks we work with, that it can be the difference between running out of money before you run out of life, and let's face it, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're either going to die without any money or you're going to die with money. And I prefer to be on the side of the equation where there's something in there. something in the tank so it doesn't just run out at the end. And maintaining the standard of life, the quality of life that you've come to expect. And I say this, as we've said on our previous shows, it's not just money we manage, it's expectations, it's people's dreams. And to have your ideal life realized is really what it's about. So if your dream is about spending more time with your grandkids, traveling more, but we're going to drill down on some of these things, and your ability to do this. Sometimes, we talk with a lot of our clients and their kids are living all over the country, but their freedom to be able to go about the country, move about the country and go see their kids and spend, time with them. Or we've got some clients here, they're just headed out the door to go on a cruise.
That's right. And I'm sure some of you have thought about retirement, or maybe you've even done some planning about what you're going to do in retirement. But think for a second, if we could improve your lifestyle in retirement, we can make it just a little bit better. How much more positive would that be? How much more strength, motivation would it give you today in order to realize that extravagant lifestyle in retirement, like Rick just mentioned, by spending more time with your grandkids, by gardening, traveling, doing whatever you want to do, you can do very simple, easy strategies today to ensure that you could have a long-lasting, fun retirement.
Now look at this in contrast, Eric. I mean, now I know we're not speaking, hopefully I think most of the people we're speaking to are not the people that are happy just to get by, that want to watch every nickel they spend. This is nothing against the coupon clippers. I love a value, but if you have to do it versus that I just want to save money. I don't want to be in that have to mode where I have to clip coupons. I have to find these things where that otherwise I can't maintain that standard of living. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anybody in the 32 years that I've talked to, or you maybe in the time that we've been working together here, and that say, hey, my goal is just to get by. I've heard people say, I want to spend my last dime on my last day. And that's not a bad strategy either. There's things that can help you accomplish that, mm-hmm. And not sacrifice your standard of living. And it's just really when people, should it start to run dry, there's really only 5 pieces in the equation, which we'll drill down on more depth. But, you look at a person's, their budgets, their inflows, their outflows. Then you look at their current financial portfolio. You look at their dreams, their goals, their vision, values, and goals. And then you can test that against inflation, against taxes, and against volatility, and like, what do we do? Test it in 10,000 combinations over the last 30 years. Now, it's an interesting conversation. And next week's show, you're going to want to tune into. We're going to have a guest on from Pension Partners, and I think it's going to be Charles, because I know that we met with Michael Guyad.
Yep, one of his partners.
Yeah, and I've met with Ed up here. Yep, up in New York a few years ago when I was up there. Interesting guest. These guys wrote a white paper that got the 2014 Charles H. Dow Award. Mm-hmm. Smart guys, and their approach is an inflation rotation. And so they have an interesting approach on this, and we're fascinated by it. We've been following them for 3 years.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're fascinated. I think you will be too. So be sure and tune in for that, because it's going to be an interesting, stimulating conversation, and unique in what they do. And they don't, Michael was sitting there saying, hey, some people will say, hey, well, aren't you giving away the farm by telling people how you do this? And he said, no, I'm not, because he said, really it's about execution.
Yep. You
can have all the tools and have all the map and everything, but if you don't execute, and so that's the thing, nobody gives away their timing.
Nope.
But it's similar to what we do. People say that, well, aren't you giving away a lot of information? Well, yeah, but we want people to be informed.
Yep.
And be better informed investors, because we think it leads to clear decisions.
That's right.
That's what Straight talks about.
Looking at, on the public, on the market side, we have the same information that everybody else has. It's just up to us to decide what our strategy is. We may go right when everybody else goes left, or we may go straight. So, it's all the same information. It's how you interpret it and how you can plan ahead plan ahead to ensure you're not going to run out of income, or to ensure you've got a strategy to provide income for a set amount of years.
So we have a lot of things on our website. Go to straighttalkcleardecisions.com, and you can sign up there we do an e-newsletter that comes out every week, and it's got a lot of good information in there.
It does. It has.
I write a view every week, and then there's some other thing. We've got the headline stuff and a really good piece from H.S. Dent we pull from that says, this is what happened in the market, and this is what it means to you.
And basically there we simplify it down so you understand it and you know how it impacts you and your family, not how it impacts the rest of the world.
And then we've got a philosophical view. We got a recipe of the week.
Quote of the week. Health tip of the week.
Golf tip for you golfers.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Coming close. And then we also have our educational, events that are posted up on there.
The schedule, so you can see what we're talking about, where it is, and what time it is.
So good stuff. And I know I'm going to be starting, I think it's March the 19th on a Thursday. If you're in this area and the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, I am teaching at the University of Dayton, my class, Paranormal Retirement. And looking at these dynamics in much more depth, we break down, a chapter basically over 6 weeks and cover it more in depth. And it's really inexpensive to attend those classes up there at the campus, the Riverview campus or whatever that is. And love teaching those classes, but I'd love to have you in the class up there. Look at OLLI, OLLI, or it's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and in that chapter up there. And this will be the second time I've been at UD, and I've taught at UC 5 times I've done it down there. Love teaching that. So as we kind of look at a couple points here leading into this next segment, I think it's an interesting concept to make your money actually work for you in retirement. You spent all these years, building the savings, trying to make your investments, grow, and now you're going to churn out income, and we're talking month after month, and it needs to run really like clockwork.
Yep. Or you're talking about reducing or completely eliminating your investment fees and expenses. Now, to be honest, you're never going to be able to eliminate all the expenses. However, you will be able to efficiently reduce those expenses, with certain types of investment vehicles, both in the public side and in the private market.
And I can tell you from our investment side, and again, the transparency, we show people on a regular basis, they're surprised when we show them what they're truly paying. Not just what they're paying for an advisor, but what actually the tool itself costs. And there's so many tools that we use. So again, we'll tell you that. We're not ashamed of it. We'll tell you exactly what it is. And sometimes just those margins alone, cutting it over there and being more effective. How about instead of just simply filing taxes, and this coming up on tax seasons, you actually have a forward-looking strategy to actually pay fewer taxes, or what we call the planning part.
We like that. The last one here is plus. There is a rhyme and there is a reason. That's called a strategy as to how, why, and where you withdraw income, so you're not paying an unnecessary penalties, fees, or taxes to the government, and you get to keep more in your pocket, and at the end of the day, hopefully maybe pass it along.
Well, we're drilling down today on 6 simple moves to retire smarter. So be sure and join us in the next segment here. You're listening to the Straight Talk Clear Decisions radio shows with your host, Rick Saylor
and Eric Hamburg.
Money is an awesome thing if you know how to handle it, the joy it brings.
Hey, Rick Saylor here. Have you considered the options for maximizing Social Security? 3 things I can tell you about it. It cannot legally go broke. It's an all-or-something system, and smart planning involves strategically integrating this with the rest of your income choices. Don't make the $100,000 mistake by not planning appropriately. Consider retirement income, survivor, and spousal benefits, because there's 81 options for couples and only 9 for singles. Options and strategies like file and suspend, or claim now and claim more later. The difference between age 62 and age 70 is 57% more income for life. So be sure and ask your advisor today about Social Security planning.
Rick Saylor, smooth financial sailing for the best part of your life.
Well, welcome back to the show. I'm Rick.
And I'm Eric.
Well, as we move into this topic, we're going to have a lot of information to cover and a lot of detail to get down on, drill down on, and we just want to kind of open this up and touch, I guess, on as much as we possibly can in the short amount of time we have to cover it in.
That hour seems to go by pretty quickly.
It does. So, one of the things I think about in this 6 moves you can do to retire smarter. So one of the things, let's start by addressing, the do-it-yourselfer crowd, because there's a certain percentage of people and say, hey, well, I like to read and I'll do this myself. And we're not opposed to that. We encourage you. We say, God bless you, good luck. But here's some things to keep in mind, because I think this is becoming when the fundamentals don't function the way they're supposed to, the pieces, I know that we're professionals. And from our perspective, I don't do my own mechanical work. I got something going on with it's my bearings and my front wheel that's going to have to be fixed. I think about the doctors I go to. I don't do my own surgeries, and I don't prescribe my own medications. So, I think about this, but it's becoming ever more challenging to do this. But I think there's really 4 categories that do-it-yourselfers fall into quickly. I think, the mindful ones are the ones that are, the smart. They have the time, the energy, and desire to do their research, and they work hard putting all their time into sift, read, and analyze the available data.
The second category we have is called the bubblers. They live in a bubble of belief that they are smarter than anyone out there, so why are they going to pay for help?
The next group is the muddlers. They're not very knowledgeable, but they believe they can figure it out eventually.
And the last group is the avoiders. They know little and do the absolute minimum to get by, believing that magically the solutions will come.
So, running from the spectrum, now I think we've seen every one of these types, I guess, and since we've been here. And I think this is one of the things when we think about, you think about what you're paying. And I think, these are two sides of this. What does it cost you? And actually, what do you get paid? So sometimes when I look at some of these folks, they're expensive. They're much more expensive than a professional would be, because a competent professional should be able to manage risk and also with a rate of return, because it's not just about chasing alpha or the upside of the market. Otherwise, you would just buy the S&P 500, which is an index you can't directly invest into, but there's hybrids off of that, and that represents 500 stocks. You're not managing any risk. You're just rolling the dice and you're gambling. So you might as well just take your retirement and go to Las Vegas. So if you're in that category, then we're not talking these points may or may not be beneficial to you today. Now, for the rest of us, where we're looking for competent, capable advice that's value-based, let's touch on some of these ideas. Now, first of all, Eric, let's start with the basics. I think these are some really simple things that just about anybody could apply. But I think the rule number 1 is live below your means. Spend less than you earn.
Yep. And there's no specific amount. You might hear, we'll only spend 70% of your income or 80 or 90% of it. It's really going to be based on your lifestyle. If you consistently live below your means, you're going to more than likely be able to get by, and you're going to be able to enjoy and do everything you want to do because you're not spending too much. We're not saying, like Rick mentioned earlier in the show, clipping coupons is good or bad. If you want to do it and you like doing it, well, keep doing it. But if you're just doing it just to get by, start making some changes today, or else retirement could be a big dream that might not ever get achieved.
And this may be one of those things where our characteristics, this must be a character flaw, people that regularly live beyond their means and look for somebody else to pay their bills. I think in terms of countries, and, I would think of Greece. Mm-hmm. Greece is an example of a country, and Germany's the example of this responsible parent, if I can use that, and Greece is the irresponsible teenager who just says, hey, just give me more credit. Give me more money. And they say, well, you're not paying back what you already have. So again, you want to get out of that mode and be aware, A, that that's happening, and B, arrest that. Rule number 2 there.
It says start saving early. There is no, again, if you start saving when you're 20 years old compared to 30, you just gave yourself 10 extra years worth of saving and buying power.
So if you have a given goal, Eric, then the earlier you start, the less principal you're putting in and assuming some rate of return. So there's only in these, when I think of saving, there's time, interest, and money.
Yep, time.
That's it. And the later you start, the more catch-up you have to be, which goes back to rule number 1. You may have to even spend less than you normally would if you waited longer, because now you're going to make up the shortfall in the money you put in there.
Correct. So, and the other thing is, if you start saving earlier, you don't have to put as much away each month, so then you get to actually enjoy that today. And that's kind of
so
goes
rule
into
number
rule 3.
If you start late, make up for lost time. So now a lot of the provisions, and you don't have to give up just because you haven't started. But, if you look at the rules, the government allows for 50 years and older, which on Monday, I'll be 54 years young.
That's right.
Like my birthdays, because that means I'm still here. And you got these catch-up provisions that where you can do catch-up contributions into your retirement accounts. And even then, again, that's inside the system. Then you can actually do things where you're saving outside, what they call, they may even be tax-deferred accounts or even taxable accounts. Obviously, there's no limitations, but, save early, save often.
Yep. Rule number 4, don't leave free money on the table. So, Rick, what does that mean? Leaving free money?
Well, you know what? We've had this age-old conversation where a company, your employer, like a 401k, a 403b, deferred comp kind of plans, where that the employer will actually match your contributions. So, for example, let's say for every dollar you put in, let's say they're going to match dollar for dollar up to 3%. I think of the thrift savings plan because as many federal employees we've worked with, and then there's a 0.5% on the 4th and 5th. And if you're a federal employee retirement system FERS person, that means on the first 5% you put in, they're matching you dollar for dollar because there's another 1% they give you. Now you just doubled your money, and it's free money.
That's free money, so take advantage.
And so people would ask me that, but believe it or not, is that a good deal? And I say, okay, well, let's do this. So put down $1. And I put down $1. And we would do that, and we do it 5 times. I said, how long you want to do this? Well, so at least on the matching portion, take advantage of that, but certainly be diversified in both your tax approach, tax buckets. Make sure you're balancing out taxable, tax deferred, tax free. You don't want it all to be taxable when you come out, but take the free money. That next one.
Minimize your taxes. Taxes, they're just like death. It's inevitable.
Well, you may want to stop right here and ask, does anybody want to pay more taxes? Anybody looking for ways to pay more? Because I know the government will accept those checks.
I'm here.
So that message is out to Warren Buffett of all, at the top of the list, because I know that, the big guys, they can pay more, so you can just volunteer to pay more.
Yeah. Yeah. So minimize it. Minimize the taxes. They're coming. They're going to come at you. But if you can be efficient enough to where you can keep more in your pocket each year, at the end of the day, you're compounding on a higher dollar figure, so your account value could potentially grow a little higher and grow a little better.
And so think of it, too, this may sound like, since we're in tax time, just reduce your taxes today. So think of it like this. If you can picture 3 buckets, one of them's taxable, one's tax-deferred, and one's tax-free. And we always ask the question, which one is best? Well, the answer is yes. Because what you want, the taxable account gives you the ability, because you have basis in it, that if you have a loser, you can sell it against the winner, and there's tax strategies. Because we'd all like to pick winners, but we know the smartest people, probably are getting it right 40 to 50% of the time. Mm-hmm. I look at tax deferred. Well, these are typically where you get the matching. They're 401ks, 403bs, deferred comp, pension rollovers, those kind of things, traditional IRAs. And then the tax, and you want that because you get the tax deductions and sometimes the matching. The lax one, tax-free. Make sure that you're getting an income stream that you can plan with. So maybe you need to turn that valve on when taxes start to go up and you're balancing out your overall assets. Because if you get to retirement and everything you've got has been tax-free, we call that the tax mortgage. Yeah. Or it could be a tax ticking time bomb. Where that now the tax rates are going to go up. Yeah, we believe that simply because we're looking at the numbers demographically and saying there's 92 million baby boomers. The front engine of the train, if you looked at that like a train, is 83 and the caboose is 51. Well, if you take those people out of the working economy, you got to raise taxes some way. Now, they'll get very creative in how they take it. But if you haven't planned this, minimizing your taxes today and in the future, you may be in for a big, big unpleasant surprise.
That is correctly it.
And this last one, I don't know that, when we look in terms of, we do have more than that here. I was looking at the last one on this page, So, you look at if you're not, you don't want to get too conservative too early. Now, this should profile to your personal preference. But, we say to people, maybe you need to move a little over on the risk highway, and because you typically, not always, but typically, if you're going to take a little more exposure to stocks, you typically going to get a higher rate of return as opposed to bonds or cash. But that's not always the case. We saw the decade of the 2000s where the yield curve, they call it, risk, yield, reward, actually inverted. And the less risk you took in bonds, the more you were rewarded. So there are anomalies in the market. But let's just say for this argument's sake, there may be some positions you need to move to, because getting too conservative too young is financial suicide on the installment plan. Because if inflation's going up in 4 and you're getting 0.25 in the savings account, doesn't take a genius to figure out you're going to have some problems.
That's right. Next, rule number 7 is stay informed about your investments. So any investment is going to have some sort of risk. It's either going to have a lot of risk or it's going to have little risk, but there's still going to be some sort of risk involved. So take the smart risk. If you have all your life savings and you're feeling froggy, don't dump it all into a foreign currency. Maybe play a small portion of it into a riskier investment. So it's being smart about what type of risk you take. Because at the end of the day, if you are investing in the stock market or the bond market, you are taking some sort of risk.
Yeah, and the dynamics. We were talking with Michael Gayed at length, and he said, this is an unusual period of time where we have had very low volatility. And it's been going on for the last year and a half, 2 years. So we're in a abnormal period of time where they're stimulating, we're coming off our stimulus, but the thing that he said is starting really the first of the year, we started to see some of the dynamics shift back to fundamentals. So we're starting to things, and what that means is that certain asset classes behave opposite one another rather than correlating, moving it the same way at the same time.
And I think it was very eye-opening, at least to me. He said, typically you've heard stocks and bonds move in opposite directions. Stock market, the S&P 500, that index made, I think it was a little over 11% last year. And everybody in the stock side was excited about it. He said, well, if you took the risk, you were rewarded. And Michael Gayed countered that and said, well, the 30-year Treasury last year, 30-year U.S. Treasury bond, made a little bit over 23%.
I think he said 25.
25. So you have a stock, which is, for the most part, all risk, made 11, say a little over 11, and you've got your 30-year risk-free, quote-unquote, from the government Treasury that made over 25%.
Did you hear anything on CNBC about that?
No. And the reason I bring that up is if fundamentals get back to it, stocks and bonds should not be making that much money or losing that much money hand in hand together. They should not be this much correlated.
Yeah. Which means they're moving in the same way. So, again, it's challenging to stay informed because we know, I'm not sure that really, you look in terms, I know it wasn't on a broad radar. This next one, break free from the herd. When I think about, and again, I'm thinking about this, we know at some point volatility is going to return to the market because it's nature. It's like gravity. What goes up will come down. We know that's going to happen. We're just in an anomaly period. And more often than not, and we call this behavioral finance, when somebody's in motion of having a car accident, most people hit the brake already after the accident is going to happen because the reaction time. The same thing happens in the market, ironically enough, that most people are selling when they should be buying. By the time they find out and they're trying to sell off, it's too late.
Yep.
You hit your brakes and, you go right into the motion, finish the crash. Well, the same thing is happening in behavioral, and we've seen that in numerous studies that people just they're not proactive in their processes, they're reactive. And ironically enough, there's a fair amount of managers are that way too.
Yeah, it's human nature. You buy high and you sell low. Seems
to be the, unfortunately not the way to do it, but the way it typically happens.
Rule number 9 here is work longer. Now, not a lot of people might not like me here in saying this, but if you want to make sure your income lasts a little bit longer, continue to work. And I'm not saying continue at the full-time or where you're at. Maybe you pick up part-time work, or maybe you turn a hobby into some sort of part-time work that can generate some income for you. Because if you've paid into the Social Security system and you're eligible for Social Security benefits, the difference between your first check at age 70 from Social Security and your first check at age 62 is a massive difference. Now, depending on how much you paid in is going to depend on the difference, but I think it's, a 56% increase from age 62 to age 70 if you can afford to wait and delay your Social Security.
57%, certainly it is. And again, you're putting in at the same time, you're doing less damage to your portfolio if you're pulling out of earnings as opposed to not pulling out of your savings. So you're getting the double bonus there. The last one here in this segment is maximize your income potential. Now, say for example, typically most of us are hitting our highest earning years at the latest point. But what if you look at your field and said, hey, if you got some form of credentialing or licensing that could actually increase your pay? Or maybe there's someone in your workplace who could serve as a mentor to help advance your career. Maybe you're eligible for a government-funded workplace development training program. How about a college program that you never finished? How many credits is it going to take? Will they transfer? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you do an online degree. So maximize it at the end, crank it up, and then you can also put more into your savings, and it's not changing your lifestyle. And I've heard from my mentors, and that I've been plentiful over the years, to say, hey, go into work a little earlier, stay a little longer. Usually you're spending that time in traffic anyways. And maybe you're driving along and you're listening, and turn your car into a communiversity. Listen to training stuff and be learning all the time.
Yep.
And it's that's basically free, other than the materials that that it costs you to do that.
Well, why don't you make sure you visit our Facebook page, Rick Saylor Financial. Follow us. We put a lot of timely, informative information out there. We've got free white papers that you can get from our website at straighttalkcleardecisions.com. Use us, get the free information.
Go get those. It just takes some time to tap on, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. So if you have a question you'd like to send our way, info@Straight Talk Clear Decisions, you can certainly call and ask it. But we'll be glad to answer that on the air or even one-on-one. So we're in this next segment. We're going to wrap up down the home stretch of some strategies for pre-retirement planning and also assessing to make sure that you're on track. So you are listening to the Straight Talk Clear Decisions radio show with your no-nonsense host, Rick Saylor.
And Eric Hamburg.
Money is an awesome thing if you know how to handle it, the joy it brings.
Hey, have you heard about the new long-term care alternatives? Many of you may know how I managed my mother's care, and I took her through her money in the spend down into the veterans benefits. My father was a 2-time Korean War vet, and right into the Medicaid. She started out at $2,700 a month in assisted living, and at the end of her life, 2 years later, it was over $8,000. The three concerns I hear the most about long-term care insurance protection is that it's expensive, the premiums are rising, and I may never use it. Well, why don't you try what I did? I bought a life insurance long-term care. They can't cancel me, the premiums can never go up, and I can spend that death benefit before I die if I'm critically, chronically, or terminally ill. Be sure and ask your advisor today.
Sailor, smooth financial sailing for the best part of your life.
Well, welcome back to the Straight Talk Clear Decisions radio show with your no-nonsense hosts, Rick
and Eric.
And on this topic, Eric, 6 moves to retire smarter. And we've got a free white paper we're going to give away today. Absolutely, all you have to do is ask for it.
Yep, smart strategies for retirement.
And it's going to encapsulate a lot of what we talked about here.
And go a little bit more in depth, not just scratch the surface like we did. And a couple ways you can get that. You can first off give us a call, 513-454-9999. Go to our website, straighttalkcleardecisions.com, request the free giveaway. You can shoot us an email, info@straighttalkcleardecisions.com, or you can visit us on the Facebook page at Rick Saylor Financial. Either way, get on there, ask for the free information. We'd love to provide it to you and maybe have a little conversation with you.
And don't forget LinkedIn for our professionals out there. We would love to link up there, and we send out a lot of our communications on there, as well as Facebook, and then also Twitter. We're at Ricktirement. That's RIKTIREMNT, at Ricktirement. Kind of clever. I can't remember who was that, Cal?
I think it was Cal.
Told me that. We picked it up. He said, if you don't use that, I'm going to fly out there and
make you.
Buy you a beer. All right, so let's jump back in here. Some 6 moves, savvy moves to help stretch the retirement savings. So let's say we're in the pre-retirement mode here still. So, you've fallen short. There's time, interest, and money. You've fallen short in your savings goal. So one of these things we had mentioned, so we won't go over in depth, but after age 50, you've got a catch-up provision. And you can do an additional $5,500 into an IRA for 2014 and 2015. In your 401k in 2014, $17,500. Now it's $18,000 now.
But you can also add, if you're over 50, you can do the catch-up provision in that 401k, and you can actually give $5,500 on top of that 18. So you're really at $23,500. You can input into a 401k.
Very nice, very nice. Now, obviously, you say, well, where's that going to come from? Well, we mentioned that in the previous segment. Up your ante, up your education, improve your pay in those last years, and max that out. Work a little longer, stay retired for good when you go from that paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
Now, how about cutting Uncle Sam out of your nest egg?
That's an important one because as taxes are probably the lowest they're going to be for quite some time, the tax code is probably only going to get a little bit more expensive for the majority of us. So here's an example. If at retirement you expect to be in the 25% federal tax bracket, and let's say, for example, you have $10,000 you're withdrawing from a traditional IRA, you'll owe $2,500 to Uncle Sam, the government, for the taxes due on it. However, if you are currently today in the 15% tax bracket and you converted that $10,000 IRA to a Roth, you would only owe $1,500. So we're not saying you're going to avoid taxes. It's just pay the smaller of the two potentially, because you have to look and decide, what's my income going to be like? Where's my money coming from? And if I have a big tax liability, you might want to start paying it today on a cheaper amount than deferring it and waiting, and now you have a time bomb.
Now, word of caution here, if you're looking at conversion, which virtually the ceiling's off of that, you can create a tax-free bucket. Just be careful between the ages of 63 and 65, because there's a 2-year look back for Medicare premiums and where they calculate. So in other words, if you convert in those years, then it could jack up your Medicare premium substantially. The other thing to consider is that, it may not improve your strategy. We like to do that in a financial plan where it's actually going to show that the needle moves more positive in your circumstance.
Yep.
So don't assume just because you got some more money that's tax-free and that strategy's there. I guess the caution is don't assume, because everybody's retirement is like a snowflake.
Yep, and you really got to determine how you're going to use that money, and determining how you're going to could mean why you convert or maybe not convert.
And again, these are general, but how about this one? And you mentioned this one before. We won't beat this one up, but again, keep working. And maybe we're seeing baby boomers. That doesn't mean you have to stay in your job. Maybe you go on to an encore career. You take your skill base, you go into a field that you always dreamed of doing, and you're living your lifelong passion. I don't know if it comes through the mic, but I absolutely love what I do. And we love the people we do it for.
Yep.
And, I think we're living out our dream and our gift. And, it's just wonderful some of the places we get to go, and we travel. Not, we're working a lot, but we get to go to some places, and they pay for us to go there. And sometimes I'm speaking, and sometimes I'm just relaxing, and I put that together. But the engagement, I don't think that God intended us to just stop. Because people who stop, there was a Stanford study that was done, and beginning of my career, I came across this somewhere 15, 20 years ago. And they tracked 100, 200 men. The first 100 stopped working. The second group kept engaged. And the first group, they checked in 10 years later, and 7 out of 10 were dead. The second group, 7 out of 10 were alive and thriving. Mentally, emotionally, physically, just better off. So I think that's one of those things. Don't let that take that off the table, because stopping, and what we hear most from our clients is, I don't know how I found time to work.
Yep.
So that's the ideal life realized.
Next one here is retire to a tax-friendly state. This is more talking about your taxes. Get online and check out your state tax. And if why don't you find a state that's more friendly to your situation? So, it's not just about Uncle Sam. It's also the little cousins. The state tax bite. And I look at this, there's 7 states that have no state income tax at all, and 2 states that only tax dividends and interest. Now, we've got a resource, and if you'd like that, just reach out to us and we'll give you the connection on that. But that's a game changer. Mm-hmm.
Nobody says just because you worked here, you got to live here. So we could link you into the retirement tax map. that will give you the top 10 most friendly states for retirees and the top 10 least friendly states for retirees. Sometimes it's about your kids and it's about your social connections. You know, we've got clients that are living in two places, which I think the baby boom generation is going to tend to do more of. They're going to live sometime here in their social connections, and they're going to spend 6 months or so as snowbirds.
Yep. When it's warm or when it's cold here in Ohio, move to the south where it's warm.
Just relocate, and then when it changes, they come back.
Yep.
How about employing the bucket strategy? Now, I'm not talking about your bucket list here, although that's not a bad thing either. I'm clicking away mine a little bit at a time. You know, the idea is to set money aside to cover retirement expenses, you know, for a set amount of time into these separate quote-unquote buckets. So, for example, if you were planning for a 25-year retirement, you could divide your assets into 5 buckets.
And we're not saying these buckets are what you have to do. This is just an example of one way people could divide their money into buckets.
So think of it, the first 5 years is what you're going to hold the least risky investment classes, you know, and you're going to pull out of that because it's going to be paying income. And then each successive bucket would hold slightly more aggressive investment classes, assuming, again, that risk reward is there, with the last bucket holding the most aggressive investments, you know, for an example, such as stocks. Now, you wouldn't be tapping that one for 25 years, so that money is your, you want to say your backstop.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, once you set it up, then you refill it with the assets from the next one. You're kind of dialing the risk level of the assets downward as you move through the buckets,
Yep.
you know, as you're getting closer. So, again, this isn't too much different than, I guess, you know, balancing out your overall approach, but it's a strategy.
But guess what? The only way you're going to be able to know how much you need for 5 years is by planning and by getting that budget done so you can plan for the future.
Yep.
Last one here is delaying Social Security. We could talk for hours about Social Security, but the short of it is,
Touched on that one.
if you can delay Social Security and your health is in good order, it could benefit you to delay it because you get increased in the system
Of what? 8% a year
8% per
between
year.
age. If you're born between 1943 and 54, then for that formula, it's 8% a year between age 66 and age
70.
70. So 67, 68, 69, 70. Those 4 years, you're going to get 8%. That's 32% more. That's a third more income, Eric, for the rest of your life, like a pension.
It is.
Smart could be a game changer. So how about, you know, looking at analyzing some of these strategies? You know, I think one of the first ones that kind of come to mind, understand your cash flow. You know, if you're allocating, let's say, you know, your budget, let's say 20% on savings and investing, you know, 60% on essential expenses, housing, transportation, food, healthcare, cost of raising kids, which is why I love grandkids. I mean, it's a different kind of thing, but I love spending that money and helping with education. And 20% on discretionary expenses, you know, such as entertainment, clothing, dining out, personal care. Now, there are a plethora of programs that will help you track that. I know we use Mint.com, and it is a great feed, but there's so many of those out there, and they're so simple to use, and all you do is plug it in, it gives it feeds, and then it analyzes it for you, so you can say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'll do something, I'll eat in tonight or something, you know, and just, again, lays the plan, and you could do this at any stage.
Yep. So just, and again, it's understanding your cash flow. Second one here is develop a plan to save and to invest. So there's two buckets I'll just touch on quickly. Number one, everybody should have some sort of emergency fund, whether that's 3 months sitting in cash, whether that's a line of credit sitting at a bank that you get access to with cheap rates, whether that's money market accounts, but you need an emergency fund because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The biggest bucket, though, should be your 401k, your retirement savings. This is going to be where you're going to be able to grow the majority of your assets. This is what you're potentially either going to live on in retirement, and hopefully you live on a larger amount so you get to enjoy retirement.
So here's one I like, managing your debt strategically. So all debt is not equal. You know, secured lines of debt or credit, whatever you want to call it, you know, credit cards by far and large are the worst. They have the highest rates of interest, you know, and don't put your, you know, that's sometimes a license to live beyond your means, and it's not free. But I look at like mortgage, you know, long-term debt has never been so low to service, and we're going to look back on this time period. I literally refinanced my mortgage, and I know the rates are all over the place. We don't deal with this. We have partners. my first mortgage is about 2.6, and on my second mortgage on my other house, it's 3.35 on a 15-year. I mean, this is, and you look at the difference if you can get a yield be above that. So again, you want to look at these and also look at what's deductible and what's non-deductible in debt. Be smart about that, because some of it you can restructure so that it becomes deductible. You help finance that.
Number 4 here is protect your assets and protect your income. So on the asset side, insurance, it's a very boring topic. However, insurance risk management is necessary. So if you are currently working, do you have disability insurance? Is it a full disability? Is it partial disability? Maybe you don't know, and that's something to get in there and to check on. Disability. Life insurance. This is if something happens, you pass away. Make sure you have an adequate coverage for your spouse, your loved ones that you are leaving behind. And second,
we have our partners that'll do an insurance audit and make sure that folks are paying. They've got the coverage they need, and they're paying a fair amount of premium for it and not out of line.
Yep. Last one, property and casualty. This is your home and your car and your property. Make sure it's adequately insured. If something happens, that you're not going to have to throw a lot of your money out of the way in order just to get by again.
It takes an entire lifetime to build up, and you think about that to get to where you've gotten today. So, I mean, we want to be a resource for you. Reach out to us as we're reaching out to you. We appreciate all of our listeners on the show all over the world. We just saw a breakdown from our show manager, and it was interesting to find out where the people are listening and enjoying us and hopefully responding and getting a lot out of this. Share us with your friends. Go on to the Facebook, the LinkedIn. Send us a feed on Twitter. Send us comments, questions, and we'll answer them on the air. So, and again, if you like what you're hearing and you want to share us, don't keep us the best kept secret. We're out on that social media and try to get the message out and help folks as much as we possibly can.
Last but not least, request our free giveaway for the show today. It's Smart Strategies for Retirement. You can do that online. You can call us at 513-454-9999. Shoot us an email, info@straighttalkcleardecisions.com. Go to the website, Straight Talk Clear Decisions, and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Ask for the free giveaway. This is absolutely free. We just want to give it to you.
And we've got other ones on there. I know we talked about some things on the show today, and if there's other topics, we've got other papers, because it's not our first rodeo.
That's right.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure hosting this again, and I know we covered a lot of information, and you can follow up, but thank you. You're listening to the Straight Talk Clear Decisions radio show with your no-nonsense hosts, Rick Saylor
And Eric Hamburg.